Welcome back to the Successful Working Parents Podcast, the podcast where we talk to successful working parents. My guest today, he is the founder of ADVYON. He is the host of the Ask Tech Dad podcast. He's a father of three. Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Anderson.
Hey,
Brian, welcome to the show.
hey, thanks so much. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for coming. So we'd like to kick off just hearing a little bit of a background on your career up to now.
My career up to now, yeah, I started my company in 2008 with a handful of clients and just a whole bunch of passion and an idea that I wanted to do it, kind of my way, um, and make a company that I could be proud of. Um, and I really started it with a couple of goals in mind. I wanted to work with who I wanted to work with. I wanted to work for who I wanted to work for, and I never wanted to miss a soccer game ever. Um, and just have the freedom to do that, and also to enable anybody that came along this journey to share that same experience with me that I have. So treat everybody um, like give them the entrepreneurial experience without the without the risk that goes with that, right?
So what is ADVYON's primary focus?
So Advion is an IT MSP. So we take care of technology for small businesses, really all over. We mainly focus in South Carolina, but we have businesses all over in many of the states and some multinational companies that we work for as well. We do IT MSP work. We have a marketing design agency, wiring agency, and a couple other verticals that fill in there.
What were you doing for a career before you checked out on your own?
I was doing kind of the same thing with a guy that was doing something very similar at the time. But he and I kind of had a difference of opinions on how to treat employees and how to treat customers. And I decided to strike out on my own with just a handful of people that I knew that were my clients, and just kind of grew the business from there. And had to figure a whole lot of things out. 2008 was the IT MSP. They were called technology integrators. It wasn't even a thing. IT MSP then. Managed service provider is what MSP stands for. So as time progressed and the company progressed, I was able to figure out some things and solve some problems, and we've been growing ever since. And I've been blessed to help lots and lots of people and be a good positive change for many of my employees' lives and many of the people that I help. And we secure right now about 1.5 million people.
That's awesome. Tell us a little bit about your role as dad.
So that's super important to me. I grew up without a dad, so being a dad was probably one of the biggest and most important roles that I wanted to take on in my life. So being a dad to me is, the first rule of leadership is being present. You have to be there. If you know anything about Boy Scouts or whatnot, they have a leadership book, and that the first rule of leadership is to show up. It's 80%, right? So you got to be there. So that's kind of been my thing, is to make sure that I'm there for just everything that they need. I'm not going to always have the right answers, but I'm going to be there. And as an example of that, when I said that, I built my company on the premise of never missing a soccer game, and um, my oldest son, I just watched his last soccer game he's ever going to play in a school or organized sport. He was the captain of a soccer team for the South Carolina Governor School for Science and Math here. And from the time he was 5 to the time he was 18, I never missed a soccer game. And I'm pretty proud of that fact. And that's something that I've talked to my employees about, that, you know, being there is super important, but also I want them to be there for whatever their soccer game is. You know, I want my employees to make sure that they have the work life balance that is necessary today to be a successful and fulfilled person. So being a father to me is a very important role, and I really enjoy it.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm sure your employees appreciate that. So you try to instill that in the culture.
That's right. That's right. You know, our culture is the number one thing that is my responsibility here in this organization. I mean, so much so that I kind of even align my position. I'm technically the founder and chief culture officer of ADVYON. So um, for us, being a positive work environment and taking care of our employees, you know, happy employees make happy customers. Happy customers go tell other people about their experience, and then they become your sales force. So the more, you know, happy people that you're making, the bigger the sales force you have. We've grown year over year, and we don't have any salespeople because we have made a culture that just emphasizes excellence and work life balance and positivity and service based minded, you know, things, customer centricity. Um, and we are probably the highest rated IT company that I can find in the Southeast that does business to business stuff. So pretty proud of that culture that we're building, and it's all built off of I'm never going to miss a soccer game.
That's a great value to instill in a company. I like that a lot. I've worked in the employee health space for a long time, and the joke is always like, "Oh, employees are saying, hey, like we're really stressed. We need more time to ourselves," and employers like, "Well, here's a yoga class,"
Right,
right? Because
right.
it's not really
No,
actually
that's not.
solving the problem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
you
mean,
need to
we
actually
have
give them
things
the
like
space that they need.
unlimited PTO, and I know that's a, you know, a hot topic lately of whether that even exists or not, or if that's good because it encourages people not to take PTO. But what it really means for me is, you know, if the customers are happy, your work is done. You know, if you need to go and do something for Granny, then that's way more important than the medial time you're here doing a report or whatever that is. Just you know, it's not work life balance, really. It's just life balance, because we surround ourselves here in this organization with people that love what they do, so they would be doing this anyways, even if there was no money, if there was no economy. This is just what they love to do. So they're getting to fulfill their role as a provider by doing their trade and doing it really well, but they're also able to fulfill their role as a family member, as a, you know, mom, as a dad, as a son, as a daughter, um, by enabling them to have that work life balance, or the life balance of, yeah, hey, if you need to go do it, go do it.
Yeah. How have your experiences as a founder and just as a boss, as a people leader, how have that informed your experiences as a parent?
You know, family is family. I'm not the cliche guy that says, "Hey, we're all a family here at work," right? Like, you know, that's a very cliche thing that a lot of founders say, like, "Oh, we're a family." But really,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not down with that. Um, but really, treating each other with mutual respect, um, creating an environment where good communication can happen, where trustful communication can happen, is as important at work as it is at home. You know, relationships is really what you focus on, is making a healthy relationship. So whether you're making a healthy relationship with your daughter or your son, or you're making a healthy relationship with your coworkers, um, you know, showing up for them, right? 80% of that is showing up for them and being a servant leader and making sure that they need what they have to fulfill whatever goals, dreams, and desires that they have. And I don't find that any different being a parent versus being a leader of an organization. We're there to help these individuals on their journey, and guiding them with maybe some wisdom that we've learned or a different perspective or something like that. Um, but the relationship, that making sure that the steps are in place to build a strong relationship. I think that's really the key that probably bonds those two together for your question.
Do you think that your managerial style changed at all after you became a father?
No, I've kind of always been this way, and I've managed other companies before I was a dad, and my management style has always been the same. Uh, it's just applied differently when I'm in control of the variables. So I remember, when I was much younger, I was a store manager at GameStop, and trying to get people to work
Every
for
young
you.
man's dream job.
Right, right. Well, trying to get people to work for you for minimum wage and really bust their butts is difficult, right? So I didn't have control of that piece at all. So how do you motivate people to do that? You had to create relationships with them, on a personal level. You had to make sure that they were appreciated. You had to make sure that they felt like they had somewhere to go, like they were moving up in life as a person, or they were moving up in the company if they wanted to. So we had a stair step of learning where my assistant manager did all of my duties, and then the third key did all the assistant manager's duties, and then I had somebody else that knew his, so I could move out of there. And then when I did leave that company, everybody just took one step forward and they all knew what to do. It was pretty neat. So having that vision of what that looks like in the future is important um, for employees too, I think. So I've always been this way. It's just kind of my leadership management style. I'm not very good at um, I'm not very good at micromanaging. So I really like being around people that are self starters, go getters, and then empower them with everything that they need to do it. And that's worked out well for me over the course of my career.
So how do you juggle it all? You're busy running a company and you have 3 kids. How do you juggle the two?
Um, the calendar is a thing, right? you gotta you gotta plan well. And I would say this: the biggest thing that I think a lot of people miss when they're overwhelmed on stuff is the no button. And telling people no to things, having solid boundaries, is absolutely super important to being able to manage it all. So if my son has a soccer game, going back to that, and somebody wants a meeting at that time, I'm like, no, I don't care if it's the biggest deal that I've ever done. I will absolutely tell them, no, my son has a soccer game. I have to be there for it. And most of the time, when that happens in that instance, they respect me even more. And if they don't, then it's probably not the partner that I need to be with, anyways, because he's not going to respect my boundaries going forward. So remember, one of the things that I really wanted to do was work with people that I wanted to work for. And that's one way that I keep healthy relationships with my customers, is that they are on board with the same why that I am in their lives. And that's worked out for me too. Having those healthy things,
It's
saying
really
no. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
yeah. It's really cool that you've built this life in this way for yourself and you really stuck to what's important for you and you did it your way in a sense. I'm curious, like, where did that resolve come from? did you miss things early on in your career and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna go at it my way and do it the way I want to do it? Or like, where did this resolve to just stick to your guns come from?
Um, I've always liked to go to the beat of my own drum, I guess. Um, I've always had a little problem with authority. I think most entrepreneurs do, um, or think that they can do it better or whatever. There's lots of traits that you can, narrow down what makes an entrepreneur start. Um, but, a couple of those things is if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have some rules that I set for me. Otherwise, why make it? Why do it? If I'm going to work myself to death, I could do that for someone else. Um, what's the reward of all of this risk and all of this hard work? Because especially in the beginning, starting your own business isn't easy. It's not for everyone. There are lots of late nights, there are lots of early mornings, there are lots of sleepless nights about how am I going to do this and how am I going to do that. Over time, your aversion to risk um, subsides a little bit, especially after you've figured out a lot of things and you figured out the world still spins if this doesn't happen, right? Like everything's okay. Nobody went out on a stretcher today. Um, so that it's just important for me to keep those core values, because being a dad was so important to me that I wanted to make sure that I had the work life balance to be a good father, to be present, and to really experience the life that I wanted as a kid from my father. So there you go. There's some motivation there, some old time baggage that I grew out without a father that wasn't there. Right, leadership rule number one, not there, um, and I didn't want to do that. So that's been a core value that's driven me, and I've never appreciated others that don't have um, that same focus or that same um, the same values where they're just work you to death for a dollar. And that's another thing is I'm rarely motivated by money itself. I think money is really the result of good work and being helpful. The more useful you are, the more money that you get. I've made a lot of decisions that have certainly stunted some of my money, right? But I live a good life, comfortable. My kids have just about everything that they could ever want, and then some, of course. But mostly, when you grow up and you look back, I don't think that you look at all the money and you don't look at all the gifts. You remember the time that was spent with people. You remember the time that was spent with your dad. You remember the time at your uncle's. You remember the time with your grandpa. That one time they took you out fishing. And the one thing that money can't buy is time. And that's what is so precious. So for me, being there and spending that time is so important. And quite frankly, after a while, when you can get your kids whatever you want, or get yourself really within reason whatever you want, what is there to buy? What is worth buying? Let's go have an adventure. Let's go make some memories. Those are the things that last and that stick. So those are some motivations for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Are there any things that you actually, in hindsight, are like, yeah, maybe I should have done that instead? Or do you really feel like you did it the way you wanted to do it and you don't regret it?
So there are definitely some things that I would go back and change that might have made my life easier. Um, One thing that here recently that I've been doing a lot more is reaching out to others and learning about their paths, um, learning about their how they run their business. Now, I actually am deeply involved in running many companies because of this nature of my business being a chief information officer for many of these companies. Um, but getting the coaching, I think, if I had gone back and checked my mental health way earlier and realized that, getting a mental health coach is just like getting a fitness coach, especially if you've got a lot of people that are relying on you, right? You want to have the most sound mind, just like you would want to have the most sound body. So a lot of people look at, the mental health, like going to a shrink is bad. I'm crazy. It's really not. It's getting someone to help coach you. And the more coaches that I've had that have been on my team, right? Building a team to get you to where you want to go. If I'd known that way earlier, I would have been a lot further along. Every time I've gotten a mentor, it's been good for me. I've learned something, even if it wasn't, overwhelming. I've learned something. So I would say, network with mentors, get people on your team that can really steer you mentally, physically, hold you accountable. Because one thing as an entrepreneur and as a dad, quite frankly, that you really don't have is accountability. I don't have to go to every soccer game. It's only my will that gets me there. I don't have to come into work every day. It's only my will, that pushes that. So the more accountability partners you have and the more people you have on your team that are there to support you, and of course you should support them, um, it's going to be better for you in the end. And that's definitely something that if I had started that way earlier, I would have been further along.
What self-care tips do you have when it comes to taking care of your mental health, whether it's meditation practice or journaling, or what has been helpful for you?
I've got a couple of things. First of all, 24-hour rule. Something doesn't feel right to me, I don't communicate back for 24 hours. Um, in this instantly connected world, everybody feels like they have to answer somebody back as quickly as possible. And oftentimes we don't give enough thought um, to the message that's coming back. And you could say, we don't give enough thought to the project. We don't give enough thought to that. Maybe we don't give enough thought to the tact that was sent over in the message. So a 24-hour rule has been helpful for me. Having a mental
So
health.
like an email rubbed you the wrong
Yeah,
way,
email rubs you the
and
wrong way.
you
Don't
wait
answer
24
that,
hours.
man. Just don't answer it. You don't
Okay,
have to. And
that's great
quite
advice. That's
frankly,
great advice.
silence
So
is an answer.
yeah,
And I've had 24-hour rules where they've actually figured it out and emailed me back and said, hey, and then they did a clarifying thing, right? So lots of times those things solve itself. Um, Having a mental health coach has been great for me, to work through a lot of small things that I've just been struggling with, just to see it from a different perspective and get a different spin on things. And it's nice because it's not your wife, it's not your family, it's somebody that it's a completely safe space. You could say whatever you want to say there, and it doesn't get back to anybody, and it doesn't, it's just for you. So that's been a good thing. Meditation practices, breathing in the morning, mindfulness, gratitude exercises in the morning. And if I'm ever down or depressed or not feeling well or not feeling good about myself, I try to help somebody else by just doing something generous for someone else, just to make myself know that I'm, you know, that I've done something good for someone else. So I'm, a little bit more worthy, right? So that was when I had that realization, the gift of giving is selfish. And it's okay to be selfish when you're giving to someone else, and not expecting a return. You just get back, because you give for you. When I figured that out, it helped me through a lot of times when you're struggling with something.
yeah, all really powerful tips for sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about the podcast as well.
Cool.
It's called Ask Tech Dad,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
So how long ago did you found that? What was the impetus to creating that?
Yeah. So we founded that little over a year ago. We've been trying to do about a podcast a week on that, on different subjects. And it's my friend and I, my friend John and I, we have very similar interests. We're both tech guys. We're both dads, and it just seems so natural to talk about family, talk about tech, talk about the merging of the two today, whatever that is. Um, and we go over all kinds of topics from um, is crypto going to stay to uh, work life balance to social media for kids and how to handle those things. We just really get into the thought process of technology and being a dad in today's world, and just been sharing that. And there's been a couple of motivations for it. First of all, we enjoy it. We're two tech geeks just talking about tech, and we're two dads talking about dad stuff. And we have these conversations all the time. And we were just like, hey, man, we should record this. We should just do a podcast, which is fun. And then the other flip side of that is, a lot of people don't think about this, but we're the first generation, you and I, that everything that we say is going to be recorded for future generations. So your great, great, great grandson will be able to listen to this podcast, know what you look like, know what you sound like, and know what your thoughts were at the time. So with this kind of medium, you're creating a legacy for your family that you can show them what great 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 granddad was about at the time. Could you imagine going back and seeing your great 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 granddad in this kind of medium and seeing what he was about? Like we don't even
Yeah.
we can't even
It's
wrap our heads around that, right? Um,
no, I was just thinking about this. Even my grandfather, who was born in 1915, there's not a lot of, there's I don't have any data on him from before his
right.
70s and 80s,
Yeah.
really. You
Who
know what I
was
mean?
he?
Like,
I mean,
so
you just hear stories,
yeah,
right? Like it's myth, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't even think I have a picture of him from when he was my age, right? So I think
Right.
it's really interesting to think about how my kids, my grandkids, and their kids are just going to know exactly what I looked like and what I sounded like and how I acted and what I liked.
Yeah, for good, better, or worse,
Trippy
I
stuff.
mean, that's a, social media problem today is like these kids aren't really realizing that their kids are going to see how dumb you were on TikTok, way back in the day, right? So,
Yeah.
that's something that I've always wanted to do is definitely create a legacy for our family of, what we stand for, and especially who I was and some of the thoughts. Also, like a time capsule, we did this. Um, we started this right in the middle or right after COVID. So it was a nice time capsule for us to capture some of the things in tech, some of the things in family, around that time of what that is. So you can go back and really see what was interesting at the time. I think right now everybody's talking about open AI and the AI revolution that's going on. So we have had several podcasts on the development of that from the start of Mid Journey and how that's working because AI right now is a baby, and as it grows up, it's going to mature, and it's really neat to. It's going to be really neat years from now to look back on that and have a recording of how that changed everything. We lived through a couple of those things, like we lived through the smartphone, right? If we had podcasts back when the smartphone came out and could say how much it changed everybody's lives, we lived through the Google revolution where the Webster dictionary was no longer on a CD. Um, most people don't even think about that stuff now, right? But I mean, that's what AI
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
today. So it's
Yeah.
really neat to have a medium that we can, go back and look that stuff up.
Yeah. And of course, it's another thing, it's another thing on your plate, right? So you've got the company, you've got your family life, and now you've got the podcast. And I imagine that it's important to you, and you're still applying the same principles of not missing soccer games
That's right.
and making sure you have time for all three.
Yep, we schedule around everything. I've got 3 kids, so it's not just the soccer games that I don't miss for one kid. So, my daughter in the middle of his, busy season of soccer, my daughter was a competitive gymnast. and she went to practice. She went to practice 5 days a week, and in meet season had a meet on the sixth day. So she had one day off, and her practices were 4 hours a day. And one of my jobs was to take her or pick her up. Um, and then there was soccer games on that, and then there's other things around that. So you just have to keep a good schedule. You have to say no to some things and make sure that you keep your priorities, and don't you know don't skip on your core beliefs, and you could do it. You could do it.
Yeah. All right, we're going to pivot into the last segment known as Brian's Advice Corner. I'm going to give some
Oh,
advice on a few topics. You
okay.
ready?
Okay. That's fun.
Okay. So, what advice would you give for somebody who's thinking about starting their own company and making it out on their own?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really enjoy this topic because it's one of my favorite things to do is help companies start. Um, and the first thing that I would tell anybody to do is to get their team together. Um, get your finance guy, get your marketing guy, get your anybody that's going to help you create a business. Get a team in your corner, and then get them all together and say, hey, how can we make this happen? And ask for help, and ask often. You don't have to do everything on your own. Um, and really, that would be the biggest first step. Is, sure, you got an idea, sure, you kind of know what you want to do, but when you get serious about actually implementing it, get a team, get some people that have done it before, interview those people. See where somebody that you want to emulate or be close to, and interview that person. Most of the time, they're not going to tell you no. People that have other people that are interested in what they're doing want to help you because they love what they do so much. And then they are excited to help somebody else that loves what they do, because it's a validation that what they're doing is good. So they want to help. So I would say, yeah, first thing, get a team, get your team.
What advice would you give for somebody that is interested in starting a podcast?
Do it. Right? Like lots of us just talk about starting a podcast, and never really do it. Um, action, right? Make it happen. Don't worry about viewership, readership, um, any of that stuff. Just get the content out there, because the worst case scenario is maybe nobody listens to it, but at least you have an archive of whatever you were interested in at that particular time, that somebody eventually is going to be interested in that. Whether it's, if it doesn't change the way the earth spins, or it doesn't have this major impact that you thought it was, it it's going to touch somebody, and you don't even know who that is. Because people share things all over the internet that you have no clue about. And get your friends and family to listen to it, because they might get a different perspective of you that they've never seen before, or they um, might help you tighten some things up. I know that we've really gotten some great feedback from friends and family on our podcast about what they like to hear, what was exciting for them, and uh, create some contrast between people. Um, so if you have a conversational podcast like John and I do, we can't agree all the time. That doesn't make it interesting. So we definitely try to
Right.
pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely try to pick content that we don't agree on, um, so we can give both sides of a coin, which is cool.
What advice would you give to your former self?
Get your team early. Get your team early. Um, Keep sticking to your core values. They're important. Um, don't take yourself so seriously all the time. And it's probably not as big of a problem as you think it is.
That's a good one. What about good advice that you've received?
Good advice that I've received. I've received so much. Trying to narrow it down is difficult. Um, Probably the idea of giver's gain. Um, they talk about this in a lot of networking groups and a lot of groups where you're sharing ideas and whatnot. And the idea is the more that you give, the more that you get back. And I've always found that to be true, no matter what it was, no matter if you were just giving somebody a hand up for some food, or if you were really helping someone through a tough time, or you just gave some of your time, your treasure, your talent to somebody that needed it at the time and couldn't give that back to you. Give selfishly because it makes you feel good, but it always comes back to you. So the giver's gain thing has been really good for me.
All right. And last question. I don't know if I told you, my wife's expecting in July.
Oh,
I have a
congratulations.
baby girl on the way.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. July 19th, baby girl. First kid on the
Wow.
way.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for me as a soon to be first time father?
Oh
And
man.
advice in the coming last 10 weeks here, and then advice, after that.
Oh man, you are about to go through a crazy fun season in your life, and there's going to be all kinds of stress. And I'm just going to tell you, man, weed out all that stress and really focus on all the firsts, and really take the time to remember all of the firsts that are about to happen to you. Um, and record a bunch of that stuff as possible, and don't correct it. Just let it be what it is and just enjoy it for what it is. Because the time of firsts, right, when a baby's born, the first time you've had a daughter is beautiful, it's magical. The first time you bring that daughter home, the first time she giggles, um, there's just going to be so many firsts. And it's really, really cool time that you're about to enter into. So don't let all the, other stressors or other, people that are stressed kill your joy of really being in the moment, being present, and seeing all of those first happen. I'm so excited for you because it's really a cool time in your life. And everybody that's in my position says it goes by so quickly, but you really don't know what that means until it's past. And you would give anything that you had for baby Layla again. My daughter's name is Layla. Just a day with baby Layla. Now, I love my daughter the way she is right now, but just a day with baby Layla would be so special. Or baby Trad or baby Ethan, just because it's a super fun time, and it does go by real quick. So yeah,
All
congratulations.
right.
I'm
Appreciate
really
that.
excited for your
Thank you.
journey.
Thank you, man. So yeah, anything you want to promote or plug, or where can people connect with you or learn more about you?
Yeah. So if you want to connect with us, of course, our Ask Tech Diet podcast, where we do a podcast that has topics like this one. Thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast. It's something that I'm really passionate about, and you've given me another opportunity to show my passion and hopefully, help some others that listen. And if anybody wants to reach me professionally, um, they can just search for ADVYON. That's ADVYON. And they can contact me. There's probably a dozen ways to contact me through that company. And I would be happy to talk to anybody about any subject. Yeah, really, really open to any conversation that someone would want to have. So
Awesome. Brian Anderson, thank you so much for your time.
thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so great to be here.
Yeah.